everyone, welcome to Kids4Kids Youth Connections. I'm Mabel C from Kids4Kids. Today's topic is a very interesting one, how to measure love. How do we know what we do for others has an impact on them? How do we measure impact? And today we have just the perfect speaker for this topic, Cheng, Director of Ashoka East Asia. Ashoka is the global network of the world's leading change makers and social innovators. Before joining Ashoka, Mark has been invested in and helped more than 80 leading social enterprises raise capital in areas including environment, education, and health. He has written about this work in his book, The Social Investment Toolkit. So my first question to Mark is a very simple one. What is impact?
Impact is really nothing more than just simply how do you describe the good that you are doing, right? How do you describe it in a way that others will understand? And how do you describe it in a way that they'll be able to at least measure or at least have a sense on how big is that impact that you're trying to create? Because at the end of the day, right, at Ashoka, one of the things that we're very, very keen on is talking about empathy. And it's the idea that if you're a change maker and you're trying to do good for people in the world, it's because you care about them and you have empathy. And empathy is great, but empathy is a feeling. And the question is, can you demonstrate the actual concrete result of what you do? If you're trying to help people, can you say how you help them and how their lives have changed as a result of what it is that you do, whether it's teaching them or showing them something or helping them in some way. So many of you on this call are doing that. You're helping people, right? But it's so powerful to be able to say how you're helping them and also what the difference is when you have helped them as well, right? So that's, you know, how do you share knowledge about the good work that you're doing? So that for me is what impact is. It's nothing more than that. And impact will of course be different for every different organization, every project, right? So if you're helping kids to learn how to read, if you're helping to clean the environment, if you're helping elderly people, each of these different things is a different way of creating impact. So we shouldn't be fooled by words here. It's one word, but what it means will be quite specific and quite unique for every person, every individual.
Thank you very much for the very elaborate definition of impact. And you mentioned something about we want to make a change in people's life, you know, and I want to actually dive a little bit deeper in that concept, you know, because as you said, you know, you have a role as director of Ashoka East Asia and also based in Hong Kong. For the society, why do you think this belief is so important, that we believe in making a difference in people's lives? What does that concept actually help us? What kind of society can we actually build using that concept?
Yeah, well, I think this is something which is very deeply ingrained in everybody, right? Is that, human beings are naturally compassionate, and human beings naturally care about each other, right? I think it's not true that people only care about money. It's not true that people only care about themselves. If you look at, societies all over the world, here in Hong Kong, but really all over the world, everyone cares about their, children. Everyone cares about their grandparents. Everyone cares about society as a whole. And I think that starts with us and our families, and then it just grows from there and extends out. So I think it's the norm that we are naturally compassionate. And we naturally have empathy, for other people. And so it's a great joy as a human being to be able to express that through action, right? Through being able to do things for other people in a way that helps improve your community or your society or your school or whatever it might be. So that I think is the way that I would describe it, is that there's something very fulfilling about being able to take action for other people. And I'm sure that anyone on this call who's doing that, and you're all doing an incredible job on that, are discovering that for yourselves as well, right? It feels good. And I think that people kind of recognize that.
Mm, excellent. And I think you're right in saying that, like we, Kids4Kids, we have 27 community projects, led by students this year, and you're going to hear about 2 projects today. And I think it's wonderful to see that, like no matter how young you are, no matter how old you are, you actually feel that you have a place, to do something good for the people that is around you, or the community that you live in, and everybody can actually make a difference and make the world a better place. So let's go back to measurement, which is a very hard topic. Like when you talk about measuring impact, what are you actually measuring? How do you measure?
Yeah. So I think the answer here is that it really depends on what your project is, right? So as I said, working with children on education will be different from working with elderly people around healthcare, for example, or whatever it might be. But impact is always measured relative to the project that you're working on. And if we go back to the idea which I mentioned, which is that it's really only just a way of saying, what difference are you making, right? I think that there are 2 things that we want to focus on, or 2 things we want to measure. One is what we might call your output, and the other is what we might call the outcome. So let me just quickly describe to you the difference between these 2. So the output is basically what it is that you actually do. So if you're working with children and you're teaching, for example, it might be how many lessons do you run a week, or how many lessons do you run a month, right? And it's something which is very easy to measure. It is the number of lessons, or if you're delivering books to children, or you're delivering medicine to people, it literally is how much of that thing which you do you deliver. And you can measure that, whether that's lessons delivered or books or whatever it might be. So that's the output, which is basically what do you do. And then the outcome is what is the good that results from that action that you've done. So if you deliver 3 lessons a week, for example, can you then say what was the improvement that resulted from each lesson, right? And ultimately, outcome is what we're interested in. We want to see what difference in the world there is, right? How are things better as a result of the thing that you've just done? And so it may be, for example, that children's English has improved, or that an elderly person feels less lonely, or whatever it might be. So if we can talk about output and then talk about outcome, and then you can explain those 2 things to other people, then suddenly people will really understand what your project is about. And that hopefully will be a way in which you can then start to get support for your project, or even raise funding for your project, right? And so I think it's very helpful to talk about these 2 different things. What do you do, the output, and what is the consequence or the result, which is the outcome. You want to measure both. And at the end of the day, you want to have a way of saying, how is the world different or better as a result of what you've done?
Interesting. So I think, like for the output idea, it would be a lot about the quantity, right?
Yes.
Like how often or how many different things that you are actually implementing. But the tricky part is actually the outcome. Like how do you measure something? Is there any project that is actually harder to measure, or some concepts that are much harder than other concepts? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, sure. So okay. So I mean, there's going to be a wide variety of difference here in the group, right? So for some of you, the outcome is quite easy to measure. For example, that might be something like environment, for example, where let's supposing the outcome is you want to clean up a beach or an area that has become dirty, right? So what you can do is you can say we're gonna do whatever our project is. Maybe it's cleaning up this particular area, and then what you're measuring as the outcome would be, does the area actually become more clean, right? Are we able to remove the plastic bottles from that beach? Can we remove the cardboard and the packaging and those kinds of things, right? So some things, I mean, basically the easier it is to measure, the easier it is to report. So maybe that's amount of rubbish which has been removed, for example. Sometimes it might be that it's actually a dollar figure. So maybe you can record how much money did you save somebody because of the help that you gave to them, right? That could be one of the ways of doing it. But then there are many other kinds of projects, which frankly, it's not going to be so easy, right? And many of these projects would be ones where it might be a little bit more subjective. And by that, I mean that it's not something which you can easily measure, but it would be something like, for example, with elderly people, maybe you have a project so they don't feel as lonely by visiting them and having conversations with them. So the output is easy to measure. How many times a week did you visit that person? The outcome, which is, do they feel less lonely as a result of the visits that you've given, is not easy to measure, right? Because it's something which is very internal. It's something about their feelings and about that. So those kinds of projects where it's more about quality or about feeling is not easy, but doesn't mean that it's not as important. It's just as important to be able to talk to, to be able to do the projects where it's about improving people's confidence or about improving people's sense of purpose, as it is to talk about projects that are about cleaning, the beach or whatever. So we have to find a way of doing that. And that might mean, for example, simple things like asking that grandmother, how did you feel after our visit? Did we help you or did we not help you? Do you feel better or not? And even though that's not perfect, because how do you put a number on happiness or how do you put a number on loneliness? It's still better than nothing, right? It's still better than going out and saying, well, we met all these grandmothers and grandparents, but we have no idea whether they actually enjoyed our visit or not. So I think that there are ways that you can still find to try and record whether there was an improvement. And sometimes you can actually do it in physical terms. You can say, yes, we cleared this much plastic from the beach. That's easy to measure. Sometimes it has to be relative. So you might say, for example, we visited 25 grandparents last month, and 23 of them said that they definitely felt better after our visit, right? So that's a relative concept. That is, however, still really, really useful to be able to say. So that's how I would approach that question.
Yeah, about that, asking them about their feedback, would that be some tool? Like, are you talking about questionnaire?
Yes. So one way of doing this might be a little questionnaire. And one of the things that I would recommend that people do is try and ask it, not just at the beginning and at the end of your project, but as often as you can, right? So make it very simple and very quick. But for example, if you visit an elderly person every month, right, maybe at the end of every visit, just ask them, how do you feel? Has this helped you, right? And it could be something as simple as, could you give me a number on a scale from 1 to 10 of whether you feel better or worse as a result of what the games that we've just played or the workshop that we've just done. And what you can do is that at least gives you some way to begin to measure what it is that you're doing and to do that. So my recommendation is try and make it frequent, but try and make it very simple, right? You don't want to make people sign lots of documents or go through lots of exams or do any of these things. These should be short, simple, and quick things that you can just measure, just to say, are we doing a good job? Do you feel better because of what we're doing? And are we helping you? And it can be a great tool for you to then get feedback on what you're doing, right? Did you enjoy it more when we played that game, or do you enjoy it more when we just have a conversation, right? Those kinds of measures not only tell you the impact, but they actually also help you improve what you do as well. So I would think of impact measurement also as feedback, right? It's a way to get better at doing what you're doing, and having some kind of measurement. Like, even if it's as simple as on a scale of 1 to 5, are we doing a good job? That itself is already quite helpful, right? So keep it simple and use it as a tool to help you would be my recommendation.
Right. Another word that we often hear when we talk about project or implementing a project like a community project would be sustainability. This is also something that is actually a little bit abstract. Like, people always ask for, like, is your project sustainable? So when they talk about it, when we talk about sustainability, what exactly are they talking about? What are they looking for?
Yeah, so sustainability is a word that you hear in social circles a lot. And I think the simplest way of thinking about it is financial. Will you be able to raise enough money to be able to cover your costs now and for the future? right? In other words, do you have a project where it's relatively easy to persuade people to support you and to pay for what you're doing? And so normally the relationship between impact and sustainability is that if you can measure and show your impact, and you can explain to people why you're good at doing what you're doing, then hopefully they'll be willing to pay you for that, or funders will be able to offer you donations or support the work that you do. And so the more rigorous you can be, and the better the quality of the information that you can gather about the difference that you're making, in theory, that means that you should be able to find more supporters, right? People who are willing to support you and join you in helping you to do what you're doing. And that means that you become more sustainable. It means that it becomes easier for you to be able to raise funding from supporters in order to be able to do more of your work, of the program that you're running. And also, it will enable you to be able to attract more people into the program as well. So maybe what you're doing requires people to volunteer for you. Maybe it requires people to sign up for something which you're offering, right? You know, whether it's children or refugees or elderly people or whatever it might be that you're trying to help. So again, impact here really helps. Impact measurement really helps, because if you can say, well, the last 10 people who joined our workshop really felt good at the end of that, and here's the proof of that, that's going to make it much more exciting for people who want to come and join you and be part of that as well. So impact measurement helps you to bring people with you, right, on board. Not just funders, but also people who are going to come and join the program and be part of that. Volunteers, for example, helpers, and so on, as well as people who participate. And all of that makes you more sustainable. All of that helps you then to run a project that people will want to come back to again and again and support and grow and help fund as well. So sustainability is all about, will people come back for more? Will people come back again? You know, can you get better at this as you go? And so impact, sustainability, very closely related, right?
That's very good to hear. I think it's a very good tip for us, and also for the community projects that we have here, you know, like with the Action for a Cause team leaders. The other question I have is, what about your mindset? You know, like I'm asking this because, you know, like during the course of doing good, even doing good, you know, you will encounter a lot of problems. You know, we're going to hear some problems from Yannis and Britanny later.
Sure.
And also sometimes, you know, you talk about feedback as a very important element, you know, to assess, you know, whether you're actually reaching the point that you want to reach, or you're helping the people that you want to serve. But when the feedback that comes back is actually negative, or the feedback is not good, makes you feel really down, right? Makes you feel like I'm not doing the right thing. What do we do, and how do we actually use that feedback to help us become better?
Well, firstly, I think feedback is always a good thing, and it's always good to know where you could do better, right? So if you try out, you know, some lessons or some games, and the feedback is that nobody enjoys them, then you have the ability to improve. So on the mindset question, I think the mindset of anybody who is launching a social project or trying to do good for others is that you can always improve. There is no such thing. No one is perfect, right? And no one is going to. You're not expected to be perfect. So the mindset, I think, is one of adventure, and it's one of learning, right? And the way you learn is you learn by doing, and then getting feedback, and then making changes to get better. So this is a really healthy and important part of life, is recognizing that you can always learn more. And the people that you work with can always teach you, right, more. They can say, oh, you tried this, that didn't work, let's try something else, or, you know, etc. So impact is all, measuring impact is all about getting feedback. Feedback is about getting better so that you can do more good. And that actually is the process that you're on, right? So, you know, it's like an adventure where you want to find things out. So I would encourage everyone to think of yourself almost like a bit of a scientist, right? You know, when you do science, you don't go in there knowing the answers, right? You go and you try an experiment, and then you see what the experiment tells you, right? And then based on that, you get better. So don't think of this as failure. It's not failure. It's really feedback, and so it's actually a very good thing when you hear clearly that something doesn't work, right? Because it means you can change it and make it better. And that's really the spirit that we're trying to find here, is how to make things better. And so, you know, positive attitude, but it comes from humility. Nobody knows the answers, so you can always get better, and that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, that is such a very good note. And I'm going to turn to our two students now. And so today, we're going to come back to you for more questions, Mark. And so today, we're very, very happy that two of our Action for a Cause team project team leaders are joining us, Britanny and also Yannis. But before I actually talk to them, I'm going to give you a little bit of intro, especially for the people who are coming for the first time who doesn't actually know Kids4Kids much. What is Action for a Cause? Action for a Cause is actually part of our youth development program in Kids4Kids. It aims to empower youth to take action to solve a problem they see or care about in the community. And Kids4Kids support the whole journey by giving them a seed fund to start with and also a mentor to guide them along the way. So I'd like to welcome Britanny and Yannis on the floor.
My name is Yannis. I study in Poland, Kotan College, and I'm studying in Form 3. So I do this project with two of my schoolmates. Thank you.
Okay, Britanny.
I am 17 years old. My name is Britanny, and I'm studying at St. Paul's Co-Educational College. I am studying a project called Chineasy with three of my classmates.
Brilliant. So, well, you already told us about the name of your project, Britanny. So why not tell us about what the project is about and who are the people that you're serving and what are you actually trying to do in this project called Chineasy?
As the name suggests, we are teaching some ethnic minority kindergarten students about some Chinese knowledge. So we will conduct weekly lessons with 8 of the ethnic minority kindergarten students, and we would develop different kind of teaching methods. For example, different kinds of games to teach them Chinese, and we will also evaluate these methods after each lesson. And after the whole course, we will record all games or teaching methods that we have developed and send these and compile them and send these to kindergartens all over Hong Kong who would like to take these resources as reference.
Okay, thank you. So Yannis, you have a different project. So tell us about your project.
Yeah, so the name of my project is Strategy for Senior Adults. So we aim to improve their mental health and help them to connect to the society by teaching them how to use new technology like smartphones. So we will mainly teach them how to use browsers, Facebook and WhatsApp, because these are the technology that can help them to communicate with their friends and search the information they need. So, we are holding face-to-face, and we will be holding face-to-face lessons to teach them. We also have videos that will teach them how to use those apps step by step.
Well, that sounds fantastic. So you stay with me, Yannis. I want to ask you a little bit more about the background story. You know, like why do you find it interesting to work with elderly? I mean, like you are 15 years old. And then the elderly are like 70, 80 or 90 years old. It's a big age gap. So who actually inspired you to do this project, or why did you actually come up with this idea of helping the elderly?
So I would like to mention my grandma, and she has a stroke, so she can't walk and she can't even speak, and I think she just stay at home all day, and I can feel that she feels very bored, and every time I visit her, she's really happy. And I can feel that maybe there are also many other senior adults that are in a similar situation with her. Although maybe they can walk and they can talk, but maybe they don't have family members to talk to, and that makes them rather isolated from the societies. And this is not good for their mental health. So I'm come up with this project ideas. And why do I choose to teach them technology? That's because myself is a rather tech-savvy person. That I love to use different technology to make my life more convenient. And I hope that the senior adults can also have this technology to help them and improve their life. So that's why I've come up with this project idea.
Okay. And Britanny, you know, what actually made you feel interested about helping ethnic minority and also primary kids? Did you have any prior experience with them?
Yes, all 4 of our team members participated in a homework tutoring session with ethnic minority primary students. And we are all really shocked when we saw that they did not know anything about their Chinese homework, and they just made blind guesses to complete the homework. And since we are all very passionate in Chinese, and and they told us that they hate Chinese a lot, we found it we found that a bit shocking and surprised, because we all think that Chinese is a beautiful language, and we all want them to understand the kind of beauty behind Chinese language. And also for me in particular, I also experienced a lot of hardships when I was learning English, and I received a lot of help from others along my way to study English. So I realized how important is the help from others who are more experienced in this language to help you. So that's why I initiated this project with my 3 friends, so that we can design more engaging sessions and more accessible knowledge for them, so that they can understand Chinese better.
Do you think it's important for them, you know, like living in Hong Kong, to actually know Cantonese? Do you think that's very important?
Yes, because I also have a few ethnic minority classmates in my secondary school, and they told me that they experience a certain kind of discrimination due to their lack of expertise in Cantonese, and they actually understand some, but they cannot speak well. So they sometimes heard many derogatory terms to describe them, and they felt really hurt. And also the kind of lack of ability to communicate with others also block them from better assimilating to this city. So I think since Hong Kong is a really cosmopolitan and tolerant city, then I think we should also let them assimilate in our society by being able to communicate with us better.
I think that's a very good point that you made. I know that you have a lesson plan to share with us today, and something that you actually developed for the primary kids, the group that you're serving. Do you want to show us what you have?
So this PowerPoint was made by us to teach them the concept of numbers and also money. And in order to make this more engaging and funny, we try to portray a character whose name is Mr. Yellow, because in a previous lesson, they learned about colors, so we want to consolidate their memory. And we try to design his character and portray his road to wealth, because I guess money is always an interesting topic for all of us. So at first, we talk about his property, and along the way, we try to make it as a story, so we can see he earned his money along the way. And here we also teach them about some numberings in Chinese. And we also make use of different colors to attract their attention, because the attention span of kindergarten students are quite short. And at the end, we try to make this very impressive slide to show them the money they can earn along the way, so as to train them a sense of how to manage their financial assets, which we think is also quite useful to cultivate in kids. And we also make use of some funny cartoons or GIFs to attract their attention. And we also ask more about what is their experience with money. And we also they also share with us some interesting stories as well.
Did you actually get any help from teachers, for example?
Yes, we have collaborated with an organization that provide Chinese learning for ethnic minority students, and they were very kind that they also shared us some of their resources, and also one of their assistants is actually a kindergarten teacher. So every time before and after a lesson, he would evaluate our PowerPoint and the lesson performance and give us some feedback.
Well, that's really good. So did you actually seek out this collaboration yourself?
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. When you tell them about a project, what was their reaction?
They were quite happy, because they said that it really there were not many secondary school students were willing, or they realized such problem and willing to help for this. So they like volunteers a lot, so they were really happy to have us to help them.
That's good to know. We'll come back to you. So let's go to Yannis. You know, you also have a screen to share with us about what you're teaching the elderly, right?
Yes. So can everyone see the screens?
Yes.
Yeah, so we make notes, videos, and PowerPoint to teach them. And there's one of our notes which my groupmate made it, and it's about teaching them to use Facebook. So there is divided into 3 parts. In the first part, the elderly are taught on how can they set up their accounts, like setting up their portfolio, their personal informations, and we have a rather big pictures and very big words, so they can see the notes easily and clearly. So here we are teaching them how to set up their account, their information. And so we also, in the second part, we teach them the basic of using Facebook. For example, searching for information and useful pages on Facebook. They can also learn how to add friends and post on Facebook. So, and we also introduce some rather interesting pages for them so they can find information and learn about the latest news, since there's many organizations actually post regularly on Facebook. For example, some websites, especially for senior adults, the Facebook of community centers, and the Facebook of some media or supermarkets. So we believe that this is all information useful for the senior adults. So this is a sample of our notes, and yeah, thank you.
So Yannis, tell us more about, why do you choose Facebook for the elderly? Do you think that they would be interested in such a platform?
Yeah, so there is basically 2 reasons. The first reasons being, I believe there are also many elderly using Facebook. So if the elderly learn to use Facebook, they can connect with their friends. And in Facebook, it allows the senior adults to chat or post on it so they can share their life and interact with others. And the second reason is there's actually many organizations, they have a Facebook account, and they post regularly on some the activities or some useful health information. So if the senior adults know how to use Facebook, they can actually find this information and it will be very convenient for them. So that's why we choose Facebook as one of the apps we taught them.
Okay, wonderful. And I know you also found some collaborators. Can you share with us who is actually collaborating with you?
Yeah, so we have many have 2 partners. The first one is Hong Kong Housing Society Elderly Center. So they also have a website that especially for senior adults. So we want to cooperate with them, and maybe we can put our videos on their Facebook on website. So there can be more people watching the videos and learn about our project. And the second organization is YWCA. We're going to help our projects in their community centers. And these are the cooperation partner of our project.
So when we talk to Mark, like we touched on the topic about challenges or something that maybe didn't work, maybe feedback wasn't good or any problems that you encountered. And so my next question to the both of you is what is actually the biggest challenge so far? And I could only think about one very big challenge for almost all the projects that are in our AFAT teams, because of COVID. There's actually a lot of social distancing. Maybe you won't be able to see the people that you're serving. Does that happen to you, and how do you overcome it? Do you want to start first, Yannis?
Okay. So yes, COVID-19 is our main challenge, and because of this pandemic, we can't hold our face-to-face lessons, and our schedule is postponed. We have thought about using online platform, but we're also afraid that the senior adults may not be very familiar with it. So we have to postpone our lessons. But during the time, we make videos and notes and other materials for our course, and we contact cooperation organization. So these are the ways that how we cope with this challenge. And we look forward to seeing all the senior adults again in near future in the face-to-face lessons.
What about Britanny? What challenges have you faced so far?
It's also due to COVID-19. So usually we have face-to-face lessons with our kids, but since COVID-19, the center is closed. So we need to conduct online lessons. However, because online lessons have like unstable Wi-Fi and also lack of face-to-face interaction or physical involvement, their attention span is quite short, and they often lack of attention during the lessons. So we try to engage them through employing like some interesting cartoons or some online games that they can try to use some visual effects to compensate for the lack of physical involvement. And another biggest challenge is that some of them may not have very advanced electronic devices or stable Wi-Fi connection that we believe are quite necessary and common in our lives. So one of the ways to overcome this is that the center was very kind, and since March, when COVID-19 becomes less serious, the center reopens and allows some kids without electronic devices to come in the center and offer them some electronic devices to connect with our lessons.
Okay. Well, I know that we've listened to Mark, for his sharing earlier on, and I'm sure both of you actually have some questions for Mark as well. So before we actually open to the floor, I want to give you the chance to ask your specific questions to Mark about your project. Like, do you want to give him your question? And while we're doing this, I also encourage the other participants to go on slido.com, password hashtag K4K, and you can type in your questions, and we're going to choose some questions to, for the speakers to answer. But first of all, like Britanny and Yannis, do you want to ask Mark your questions now? Let's start with Britanny.
Yeah, sure. One of my questions is that how can we make the response of the kids more reliable to evaluate the effectiveness of our lessons since they are really young?
Okay, fantastic. Well, firstly, I love both your projects. I mean, I'm really, really impressed with what you've been doing and achieving. So I think it's a tricky one, right? Because, these kids are very young, so they're not going to sit down and do a questionnaire at the end or something like that. And so one of the things that I would suggest is trying to find a way to make an assessment in a way that's going to be really fun and easy for them. So it almost doesn't feel like an assessment. And I'm just wondering if there's a way you could do that, for example, as a little game that might be played at the end of a lesson or a session, which maybe you encourage them to try and answer some questions in a fun way, or in a game, a quiz way or something like that. Just to, and it sort of gives you a chance to assess them, but not feel like it's an exam or anything like that. So gamification, turning it into a game, and you're already doing games already with them. And, you could make a game around Mr. Yellow, for example, Mr. Huang, might be one of the ways you could do that. But I think it's keep it very light, keep it very simple. And keep it fun. Right? That'll be my suggestion on how to try and do that.
Okay. What about Yannis? What are your questions?
So I actually have two questions, and I will ask them one by one so you can answer them one by one. And so my first question is, does the number of participants really reflect the impact of our project? Is there any better or more accurate way in doing so?
Yeah, so it's a great question because many projects will be struggling with this question of how many people should you try and work with, right? Or try and serve. And the way that I would answer that is to say that it's not about the number of people. Okay, so that's a very superficial way of thinking about it, right? Especially for the kind of project where you're working on, which is really about what we might call a deep intervention for an individual, right? So if you succeed, you're going to make a big difference to somebody's life. And therefore, it's about quality, it's not about quantity, right? And so what I would encourage would be to find a metric which is not about the number of elderly people that you're working with, but rather about how much difference did you make in the life of one of the elderly people, right? And focus on quality and focus on the, did they acquire those skills around connecting with people on Facebook? Are they using WhatsApp on a regular basis after you've taught them how to do so? That's what matters, right? And if you can get that right, then numbers will come, but not now. I think at this point in time, it's really about focusing on the quality, right? Which is how many people learn the skills which you're trying to teach. So quality, not quantity.
Another question is, how can we make sure that the questionnaire is easy to understand for senior adults?
Yeah. So in this case, maybe the answer is that the test doesn't have to be a questionnaire. Because what you're doing is you're trying to teach skills, right? You're trying to teach people how to use Facebook, how to use WhatsApp, and those kinds of things. And so maybe what it would be to ask them, did you, use WhatsApp with your relatives last week? And just record how many of them actually did, right? So what you want to see here is behavior change. What you want to see here is, have they actually taken these ideas and begun to use them? And so in a way, you can ask that question and find that out without actually having to use a questionnaire. And again, what I'm trying to suggest here is, can you find ways to make it simple, easy, and natural to work out whether they've acquired those skills? So for example, what you might want to do is actually send a WhatsApp message to an elderly person after they've been taught about WhatsApp, right? Do they respond to you? Do they share with you a photograph, something like that, right? It's a way of finding out without actually having to be very exam focused on this, right? So we've all done enough exams. I think that there's no need for that. But if you can try and find simple ways to do this, to test them, maybe send them a message on Facebook, right, or something like that, and then just see how many respond, or just ask them how many of them have used it. Was it helpful for them? Get their relatives to know that uncle is now on Facebook or is now on WhatsApp, and see whether that happened. That's the kind of very practical thing that you can ask, and I think will be most helpful.
That's really good. I'm so happy that you could answer their questions like in a very sort of practical way. And I'm sure that other people in the forum today also have questions for our speakers. So again, let's go back to slido.com, to type in your questions if you haven't done it yet. And may I also remind you, if you have a specific question about a specific speaker, like you want to ask Mark, please specify in your question. Or if you have a general question for everybody, you're welcome to do so as well. So do we have some questions? And maybe we'll look at two of the questions that sent in. So we have a question from Mark. How big an outcome can one person achieve? And does it matter how big or small a service project is? Let's go to this one first. Mark, please.
Yeah, sure. So in the Ashoka network, where we support a lot of change makers, we've seen people achieve incredible outcomes, right? Just take a young person like Greta Thunberg, right? She has literally changed the world and reached millions of people with her, with awareness about what's happening to the planet, right? So the sky is the limit in terms of how much you can achieve. However, my recommendation is, when you start, don't worry about size, don't worry about scale, right? The most important thing is to make something very, very small and see if it works, if it makes a difference, right? If you try and go for size too quickly, it's too much, right? So what I recommend is start small. It's fine to work with 1 or 2 kids. It's fine to work with 1 or 2 elderly people or whoever it might be. It's not about numbers, right? It's about giving them an incredible experience. And if those 1 or 2 kids really learn and enjoy it and have a great time, if those elderly people are now, WhatsApping with their relatives every week, you've made a huge difference already in just a couple of lives, and that's fantastic. And then you can build from there. So always start small. Don't worry about the numbers. Focus on quality and really making a difference. And then numbers can come after that. But that not at the beginning. So size is not important at the beginning.
Thank you. So we have a second question for the 2 AFAT team leaders, Britanny and Yannis. How do you think this experience in being a social entrepreneur will help you in your life? So this is a big question, but it should be very interesting to hear what you have to say. Britanny?
I think this helped me in 2 ways. The first way is it helps me how to communicate with people better. The second way is how to find resources that you need during the process. Because for my project, it is really hard to communicate effectively with the kids and to arouse their interest in Chinese, which is a subject that they used to hate a lot about. So effective communication skills such as smile or like your eye contact and a tone that show your sincerity is really important, and to make them feel that they are being cared and they are being they can really enjoy in the lesson. And sometimes you can also use different devices nowadays, such as some cartoons online or GIFs online or different toys that you can make them engage. So I think this is really important, and this skills also help me a lot in my interaction with other people. And the second way is that it helps me to be more resourceful and to be more flexible. Because at the start, I really have nothing. I have no organization to work with. I have no team members to cooperate with. And I don't really have any target audience that I can work with. However, I realized that many people around me also have similar experience and similar desire to help people in need. So when you reach out for them, they will be really willing to help you. And for there are a lot of organizations out there that can provide you with things that you need. For example, kindergarten teachers or a stable Wi-Fi connection. So just be courageous to reach out for them, because they won't meet you in real life. So yeah, even if you fail, it's okay. Yeah.
So, I believe working in this project also, in two ways. So the first way is that I become a more organizational person, and I'm better at doing planning and organizing events. So, in this project, we really need to have a plan and do it from scratch. So, everything have to plan it in advance and set where are we going to do that, and who are we going to work with. And due to the pandemic, we also have to adjust our plan. So I think it was a really good experience that it teach me to be organizational and flexible. And the second way is that by knowing that I can make a difference and I can actually do projects to help the society, I become more courageous and confident. And in the future, I will also believe in my ability in making a difference and making the day better for someone. So that's what I gained from doing this project.
Thank you so much. We can actually have a few more questions. I have a question for you, Mark. And in a lot of situations when we have the right intention, the right tool, the right impact measurement, and everything is right, but then it just doesn't go well. The project just doesn't go well. Do you believe that sometimes it's also about timing? Like there are situations or environment situation that we cannot control. And in that kind of situation, because you are so experienced with your experience with social investing and also being an Ashoka member, and I wonder from your experience and also from your observation, when you see projects that it seems like everything is just like there, prepared already, but it just doesn't happen, and there are things outside that we cannot control. And what do you suggest those people do?
Yes, well, it does happen, right? And we've just seen a world-class example of that with COVID. Everyone's plans have been changed suddenly because of something which nobody expected. So it does happen, and it's part of life. Is that there are things that even if you do everything perfectly, it's not in your control, and things can change. And I think that there's two things, right? Firstly, just to recognize that it's not your fault, that these things happen, and almost accept that as part of the process. The second thing is don't hold too tightly to plans that you've already made, because part of the skill here is the ability to adapt and to change. So Britanny spoke about, for example, moving stuff online and exploring whether that can work. Those are the kinds of things you're going to have to try out, right? Things will change very quickly, and you're going to need to find some way to adapt if you can. And maybe you can't. Maybe there are you just can't reach those kids because of COVID or whatever it might be. So okay, that's fine. You did your best, right? But sometimes you might be able to find a different way to deliver the service, or you might find a way to adapt. And so just be ready to be able to make changes and don't worry about it too much, right? I think that's the important thing. You don't make a plan and then just stick to it forever. You make a plan and then life happens and then things change and then you adapt. And that's, again, one of the great skills that everyone here is learning is how do you change things based on what happens next, right? So I think that's an incredible skill to have, is to say, okay, we can't go out and visit them now, but maybe what else can we do? And so this ability to improvise, to come up with something, try something different, is a great skill for an entrepreneur to have.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that encouragement. Do you have maybe 2 more questions from the audience? Let's take a look. How to measure a project that advocates raising awareness about a specific social issue, issuing website or apps?
I think it would depend on the audience, who you're trying to reach, right? And what's the best way to reach them. So I think for many, particularly older audiences, they probably interact best through website. But for others, just very comfortable now, just downloading the latest apps. And it's a question also of where do people find you as well, right? So it depends on your very specific audience, but are they going to be the kind of people who are going to be browsing online and will find it very easily that way? Or would it be through reference via recommendations of friends on WhatsApp and so on, whether they would use it that way? I think increasingly most people are very comfortable with apps, right? And are using that more and more because everyone's got a smartphone. However, having said that, a lot of people still use websites, and that might be easier for some people. And it's also maybe easier to create a website than it is to create an app at this time.
Yeah.
So if you want to do something quickly, a website might be great. The final thing I would say is websites are probably better where it's about information, and apps is where you want people to actually do things, put in numbers or actually, do things. So I think it depends what you're trying to do as well.
So this is for Mark again. When running a social enterprise, sometimes the last thing on one's mind is measuring the impact because we're just starting out. Now, do we measure the impact based on the number of people who know about a brand or based on the sales we make?
In the case there, what you're doing is you're about educating people, right? You're trying to change people's perceptions about a product or a service or about a health condition or whatever it might be. And in that case, if it's awareness, which is the what you're working on, then number of people who know about you, I think would be great. However, if the product that you're selling is directly related to the sales that you make, right? So if you were selling medicine, for example, then the more people who buy it, the better. Then maybe sales might be the right way of thinking about it. But I don't think you have to limit yourself to just sales or brand awareness. I think have a think about the problem that it is that you're looking at, and it may be that it's simply the number of people who just know about you, right, or the number of people who change their behavior as a result of what it is that you're doing. So and again, very often you don't know what the impact is until you've gotten going, and then you suddenly realize that a lot of people are getting so much value from what we're doing because they're learning about this or they're now doing that. So it's fine to develop your impact as you go and refine it. And so don't feel that you're stuck with an impact metric, at the beginning. As you explore more and as you do more, you'll find you're creating impact in new and different ways. And so feel free to develop that as you wish. You're not bound by it, and you can certainly evolve it as you go.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think that's the end of our Q&A session. And before you go, I would like to ask for your feedback. As Mark has told us that feedback is always very important for us to improve and also for an organization to grow. So if you go back to slido.com, #K4K, or using this QR code, then you will see this questionnaire. Okay, so you will see this questionnaire, and I really want your help to let us know how it goes. And also, you know what? You can also tell us what kind of topics you want for the next Youth Connections. And there's a question about what you want to hear and what kind of topics interest you. Anything about entrepreneurship, anything about doing good for the society, anything about passion projects, and what you want to do to make a difference in the world is actually welcome. and we will really consider. And you can actually find it from Slido. If you go to the top and then the pull-down menu, and then you will see the word questionnaire, and then this questionnaire will come up. Okay. So once again, we really thank you for coming and joining us today. And you can always contact the team by using this email address and tell us anything about you want to know about Action for a Cause or Kids4Kids. And I want to thank again our guest speaker, Mark Cheng. You know, like your insights are really, really helpful. And also our two project team leaders, Britanny and Yannis. What you've done is actually very interesting and also very meaningful. And I salute you. When you are facing COVID and also a lot of things that you can't do, you are trying to be flexible, and then you think about also your beneficiaries, the people that you want to serve, and then your heart is with them. And we assure that this time of, you know, like social distancing and also everything being closed is actually hopefully will be relaxed, you know, in a few months' time. And I'm sure you will find your way to meet your participants and also keep up with your good work, making your lesson plans and also making your plans until you meet them. And thank you very much again for joining us. I'm Mabel C from Kids4Kids, and remember this, before you go, you're never too young to change the world. Goodbye.